Welcome to Career Launch Live. I am your host, Catherine McCord. I am very excited to have a couple of very special guests today, people that I have known for quite some time. Super excited to have them join us. We're going to be having JaBre Scott with us, who has been a VP in the payment space for years, also has a wonderful new business he's going to tell us all about. And also Dan Roth, who has really been climbing the ladder as an influencer in the candidate placement space on LinkedIn. And we'll talk to him a little bit more about that later. So today's subject is really near and dear to me, and it's true diversity in executive leadership, which is very important. We're going to talk about what true diversity means. We're going to talk about why it matters, the facts surrounding it, and how we get to where we need to be. So first and foremost, I want to go ahead and bring on my first guest because he's graciously decided to be with us the whole show, which I'm very excited about. I want to welcome Mr. JaBre Scott. Hey.
Hey, Catherine, how are you?
I am fantastic. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me to the show. I'm excited to have a conversation and, see where it goes.
I know. I'm excited to have you. And you were kind of my first thought for this discussion because we've had conversations along these lines before. But I want to kind of start with, give us a brief bio of who you are and kind of your background.
Yeah, no, got it. Thanks. JaBre Scott, born and raised. I'm from Savannah, Georgia. Went to Georgia Southern University. Had a chance to play football there, cross Greek there. And at the time I was in college, I actually became a young father, which catapulted my sales career. Right. Went into school with ambitions to become a sports agent. Jerry Maguire, Arliss was.
Show me the money.
Yeah. But of course, life happens, and I had a chance to take a sales job at the Jacksonville Regional Chamber of Commerce. And to be fair, I fell in love with sales, the competitiveness of it. It allowed me to have that athletic side of myself, and I could see the ticker move from a quota standpoint, and then of course commission checks. The driving factor.
And so one of the things that I'm excited about is you and I have a kind of an ongoing professional relationship because you were a candidate of mine.
Yes.
At one point. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got me into the executive launch pad that I was looking for. So I came into the payments industry, really stumbled upon it, was at Verizon and went to Sage Payment Solutions. Honestly, did not know the company, didn't know what payment solutions were. I just know that it was sales and I could make some money. But then once I identified that it was a good industry for me, that's when I connected with you and you introduced me to Payscape, which was nothing but a great organization to work for. Had a chance to find some mentors in that organization, built some really great relationships that I still have till today. And honestly, into this conversation that we're going to dive into is, how do we make the change? And it starts with building certain relationships internally.
That's right. 100%. And I want to kind of hit on that really hard, that relationships and everything are key. So we talk about that a lot on the show. We talk about relationships. We talk about how you need relationships to get a job. And real quick plug, if you're looking for a job, check out the Who You Know. That's WHOYAKNOW. Check their show out later today at 4 p.m. They are terrific. They are, and it's all about who you know and teaching you how to network and how to be successful. It's really wonderful. People have even gotten hired off of their comments. So anyway, got to plug those guys every chance I get. Sorry.
Hey, I
but I do want to stress the importance of relationship building. No matter what you're going into, start networking way before you ever need anything. Just get out there, get to know people. Don't ask, give, right? Yeah. And then you'll be surprised what circles back to you from that.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that has gotten me, again, the attaining of diversity at the executive level was every organization you come in, I would say be active. Go ahead and build your personal brand internally, identify, be it a committee you want to be on or some way you can serve outside of just your job. And again, it's nothing more than just creating that personal brand. It shows that you are willing to go above and beyond and ultimately allows you to build those relationships internally. Because with sales, it's two sales cycles that to be successful. One is outside the organization because you're doing what they ask you to do, but the other one is inside the organization as well, building those relationships and identifying the resources to help you in your career.
100%.
all the way.
100%. And I want to say, so let's dive into today's topic. So I am a fact nerd. I am. I spout stats on this show all the time. And by the way, for anyone who wants to question my statistics, I have dropped all of my sources into the comments. And I will go ahead and say now that my sources today are fortune.com. That's the same company that does the Fortune 500 and 100 list, all of that. Biz Journal, the Society Pages, Korn Ferry, Center for Disease Control, we'll get to that in a minute, Statista, Census.gov, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Entrepreneur.com, and Bookings.edu. Those are my sources for today. Cool. So we're talking about diversity, true diversity in executive leadership. And I just want to get on my soapbox here for a minute, because in what I do, it really gets on my nerves when people try to tell me, of all people, that diversity is no longer a problem. Anybody can get where they want to be. I get really irritated. And first of all, it's always white people that say that to me. I have never had, and usually white men, not always, but usually. And I've never had a minority person say that to me, ever. And that should tell you something, but I want to go ahead and give the stats on this. So according to fortune.com, and who again makes the list themselves, out of the Fortune 500, so that's 500 of the top companies in this country, we have 4 Black executives.
Wow.
Which by percentage, by the way, in this country, we should be looking at somewhere around 70. Obviously, it's never going to be exact, right? But somewhere around 70, not 4. Okay. Yeah. So we're not even, we're at about 5% of where we ought to be. For Hispanic people, they hold about 5% of the Fortune 500 positions. And so there's 16 of them. By percentage, we should be at about 92 of them. So somewhere around 90 of them.
Got it.
There are 10 Asian CEOs in the Fortune 500, somewhere in the Pacific Islands, something like that. And those are actually the closest. There should only be probably about 30 by percentage of population. So they're at the closest mark. And that really disturbed me. And these are current numbers, by the way, guys. This is for last year. And in the history of the Fortune 500, there's only been 19 Black CEOs ever.
That's eye-opening.
Yeah, it is. And think about that. So we should have around 70. I'd even be happy with like 55 or 60, I think, and because, you just kind of never know. And we've never even had a quarter of that, or we've had right at about a quarter of that total ever.
That's a big number, yeah.
That's huge. That is such an awful gap. It's horrible. Women are still far back there too. Let me see here. So we have, white men make up 35% of the population.
Okay.
But 92% of the Fortune 500 CEOs.
Yeah, that's just skewed numbers. Whoever, especially with so many companies saying that they have a focus on diversity.
And I do want to say that. So I want to say that that's why this is what we're hitting on. So people go, oh, there's diversity. There's diversity in leadership. No, there's diversity in management. Yeah. Okay. There's tons of diversity in management. Nobody's disputing that. You can get promoted. But when it comes to real decision-making power, there's a cap. Yeah. And women, while we are doing better, it's still not great. So women are still only at about 12% of CEOs in the Fortune 500 level. Now, something really cool, small businesses are kicking butt. We're hiring a lot more executives that are minorities and women. So that's really great. And I was also, so there's all different kinds of diversity, right? Yeah. Ageism. Let's talk about ageism for a second, because ageism is a problem when you get a job, but not at executive leadership. The average executive is almost 55 years old.
Got it. So they're looking for people that seem or come across as more seasoned, older, more mature. Right. Those type of things.
Right. So we're doing good there. I looked up neurodiversity, which we're going to dive into more later. So like ADHD, all kinds of, oh, hi, Chandra. Good morning. I had somebody said good morning to us.
No problem.
And there's like there's no openly neurodiverse information for Fortune 500 CEOs, just none. So that was kind of interesting. We'll dive into that, but I want to go back to this race issue. Why do you think there's the disparity?
I think it starts at the top. Number one, the way that we're going to make an immediate change, and I hope I'm answering this correctly, is one, is getting that representation of the organization at the board level. To your point, we do see a lot of diversity managers at that middle manager level. But once you get into that senior leadership, when you're talking about revenue, when you're talking about the hiring, the firing, the empowering portion of it, and where we're going as an organization, that's where I see that the biggest change that can be made. Because when you show that, it gives us the one thing that we need is representation. And that goes back to probably what the issue is. There's a lack of representation in these organizations, which means there's a lack of understanding from cultural biases. It could be differences in ageism at this point, what the millennials want and compared to what senior level guys want. Is really going to start with the culture that's created internally with that organization, and it's going to allow people to be themselves in a very authentic way. How am I able to come to work and be myself? Because me being in my skin and comfortable, knowing that I'm accepted by my organization, is going to allow me to become that successful person, salesperson, whoever with department. Because that's a level of welcoming. We all are looking for things like that.
I completely agree. I do think that that's a big part, because I hear a lot of, well, why don't more minorities apply? Well, first of all, they do. Let me just get that right on out of the way. Yes. But there are a lot of articles and studies as well that you can go out and research on your own. And Michaela, who used to do our psychology segment, has brought these up in previous episodes that show that when somebody does not see someone who is like them in an executive type position, they are less likely to feel comfortable applying, because they're just going to think, well, this just isn't something that's welcome here. Yeah. It creates an automatic block in their brain. And that's actually, there's a psychological basis to that. I think, and then people go, okay, so how do we get there? Well, number one, quit just hiring the next person in line.
Exactly.
Right? Because there's probably another white dude. Give everybody a chance to apply. Yeah. Right? I mean, just reach out. You climbed the ladder at your last job, right? So you went up into the executive level. So what prompted that, and what was your experience like? What made you feel comfortable?
Got it. It started honestly with the culture. The culture at well, one thing, let me go back, because again, one way that a lot of people can get the experience that they are having barriers in the traditional corporate America is looking in the private sector, or those small businesses, those tech startups that do have a different mindset in regards to the way business is done. I did that. I moved from a W-2 corporate job to moving into a fintech organization that really did have an entrepreneurial spirit. I can tell you it was a learning curve for me, because I was told I can do some things without red tape, but when you're used to being in a scenario where red tape is always in front of you, it does give you that imposter, that imposter a little bit longer, because like, am I really doing what I'm supposed to? So what I will say, those are other options when you're looking to move up to the executive leadership role. Look at different spaces to play. You don't have to just play in the corporate world. You can find different technology industries or different industries and companies that work for you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And let's go back to the fact that so smaller companies like what I run and that JaBre worked for, a lot of my clients, they are more likely to put minorities and women into, and neurodiverse people into positions of power, real decision making. That's just, it's the way it goes. It's a different culture. It's a different mentality. Very, very different. But let's circle back to this Fortune 500 business and all the other big companies like that are less likely. So right now we've got, 90 whatever percent, which is ridiculous, of these positions being filled with white men. And I always hear this argument of, well, we shouldn't just fire people just because they're a white dude and just to get a minority in there. I don't know. I have mixed thoughts on that, because like, well, how are we ever going to fix the problem if we don't start moving them out, now, and just start moving them out? And then the other side of me says, well, yeah, but if somebody's really good at their job, there is that point too. So how do we start to push that transition fairly?
Yeah, no, that's a very fair question.
Or does fair matter?
In business, again, I think fair comes down to the company culture. It can come down to a lot of times, especially in the industry you're in, holding a lot of these senior level guys accountable. What I've seen in the past is, somebody has earned that tenure. They've been in the position 15, 20 years, but a lot of people aren't really digging into, are you really driving revenue? Are you being innovative?
Right.
Making changes that's going to continue us going forward? The
Right.
good leaders will
That's a good point. That's a good point, because people do forget to, it's like, oh, you've been here forever. Here, we'll just promote you.
Yeah,
No.
promote you, or it's either your time, or you are sitting in a position where somebody else maybe can make a bigger impact, but because you've been in that position for 10 years, you just kind of stay there.
Right.
I think programs, I think leadership programs that concentrate on getting minorities the exposure that they need to a lot of the information.
Yes.
Exposure, training, but it goes back to representation and everything like that, and culture is what cultivates those type of relationships. When you create a culture that you can see a senior level manager, but have that open door policy of saying, here's a certain time period, or here's an initiative we have that allows us to be on the same level when it comes to as employees. Just start talking and having those transparent conversations, and then also allowing feedback from the employees in a transparent. This is what we need in order to get, in order to smooth the needle a little bit. So if I was to say anything, the culture, adding programs in place that does specifically target new talent, but in the minority space, of understanding that there may be a different cultural understanding or something that comes from the organization simply by having conversations that we haven't had in the past.
100%. And I want to hit on a few things that you said. Number one, and I want to specify something. Number one, nobody here is advocating token hiring. That helps no one. Okay. What we're saying is create the equal opportunity for everyone. And you may think that you're doing that, and then when you really reach out and start educating yourself, you're going to go, oh, crud, we are failing miserably. Whoops, my bad. And it may not even be intentional. In fact, I believe for a lot of organizations, it's not intentional. It's not something at the front of their minds, but it needs to be so that you can fix it. Number two, I think you're spot on, JaBre. I think that having, and this is kind of what you said kind of fed into an idea that I had thinking about coming into the show, is I think the thing for this majority of white male CEOs to do is to because a lot of times what companies will do is promote from within, right? Or, promote or poach somebody from a role just below that from another company. So make sure that the people that you're putting directly under you do represent true diversity, everything from neurodiverse, age, gender, orientation, race, all of that. Make sure that there is a truly diverse group below you to then pluck talent from when it comes time to replace you. Right? I mean, I feel like that would make sense. Just that way, just kind of naturally happens. Just kind of naturally.
I honestly believe that. I mean, it makes a good strategy for you to have a team that looks like the market that you're going after. And it is a diverse market. So when I look at teams that I've built in the past, I am pretty strategic about the type of demographics I want to go after, the type of sales professional that can connect with multiple people of different races and ethnicities, because everybody could potentially be a client.
100%. 100%. And there are so many studies, including by Boston Consulting Group, showing that you have an average revenue increase of 18 to 22% when you have a truly diverse staff, because you do understand your client base better.
Exactly. And you're going to come with new ideas. You're going to come with ability to allow others to be transparent. Again, I love that word, in their successes, but also failures. And that then allows you to see that it's not just you, or if you're doing something really well, let's see if that can be duplicated across channels or within the team and make everyone better. But I think that does
100%.
If all of us have that approach of a team approach, but then all of us are represented. Representation does matter in diversity. And a lot of people say that they have a diversity program, but the representation is still not there. And that's what it truly means and looks like.
100%. And I do want to say a couple of things too on this. So one of the things that really matters when you're getting in new talent is employer branding, right? I mean, you and I have had these conversations in the past. So a couple things. Don't just slap a couple pictures on your website that happen to have a couple of minorities in them. Okay. You need to actually change your brand, change the things that you're talking about. And then also when you're creating a diversity plan, white people, shut up. Shut up. Just listen, sit down and have conversations, and don't just start deciding that what people tell you is valid or invalid or reasonable or not reasonable. Shut up and listen to them. Be quiet, shut your mouth. You will be surprised what you learn. And the more that you listen and the more that you accept and the more that you try to learn, the more they will tell you and the more that you grow and come together. It's an amazing process. I've gotten to watch it recently with a very large organization in the Dallas, Texas area. And it's a really cool thing to see an organization that really did care and all of a sudden went, oh my gosh, we're not doing everything that we should be. Yeah. And stopped and just started listening and talking and caring, and how much that's really impacted the employees and the new talent that they're getting and all of that. It's really incredible.
Yeah. And I think that, with the social climate, of course, and then the unfortunate of the pandemic, it just really created an eye-opening opportunity for, really what's happening in America, not only from a race relations standpoint, but then also, more focus on adding diversity to certain to industries of just all around. When you do have those, comments from the Wells Fargo CEO saying there's a small pool of talent and things like that, it can be very frustrating, especially for somebody like me in financial services that does know that there is talent out there. And, I know we'll touch on some things that I'm doing to help with that in regards to making sure that the talent is not only seen, but they're also being trained the correct way, that they are also have the exposure that is needed to excel once they get into these positions. Because what you spoke on earlier about token hiring, I don't think, and I want to make sure that I don't want my message to come across like just hire somebody because no. But it does have to come with the opportunity. And then once the opportunity is given, there is a level of accountability and responsibility on that sales professional, no matter what age, race, ethnicity, for them to perform.
And I do want to specify too that just because you're a white man doesn't mean you don't have any kind of diversity at all. You could be neurodiverse, you could be gay, you could be, whatever. There's a bajillion different things that somebody could be. So we're not saying don't hire white men. Okay, nobody's saying that. But what we're saying is you don't only promote them to executives. Consider other people. And I want to touch too on something that I've heard a few times recently, and it was the education aspect. Okay. And so statistically, it is right now that people of Asian descent have the most degrees, the most likely to have a degree, typically the higher degree, and have the highest level of income in the United States. Right below that are Caucasian/white people. Then below that, so this is real interesting. So the Hispanic population is less likely to graduate from college, but has a $10,000 a year higher average income than the Black population.
Wow. Okay.
So 7% more of Black people graduate college, but then they're going to make $10,000 a year less on average. And I think looking at all the numbers, now this part's just my opinion, but I think looking at all the numbers that I've looked at, the biggest reason for that is when you hear these averages, remember that that's all jobs mashed together, right? Yeah. Whether you're a janitor or a CEO. So the biggest reason that I see for that is that ceiling that's happening, the not getting promoted. Because when you look factually, like to like, or is getting paid basically the same thing, whether you're woman, man, race, whatever. It's all getting paid pretty equally. So if you're in Georgia and you have the same degree and the same, level and the same level of experience and all that, you're getting paid the same as everybody else, pretty much, within a reasonable percentage. So that's not the problem. The problem is that ceiling, that you can't get to that executive level. That, again, that's just what I'm figuring out from the facts that everybody that's same to same is getting paid the same, and then everything else I'm reading, that's just my opinion. Yep. But isn't that interesting though? Like that's what creates these huge gaps that we're always hearing, is just this one little fact that we're just not allowing minority people to elevate. It's crazy.
That's extremely interesting. Of course, the fact that more Blacks are graduating in college, but not earning as much as, some Hispanics, and they are graduating at the same rate. Again, I think it starts with number one, conversations like this of putting the flashlight on this. Like, are we aware that this is what's going on? And that's
right.
on sides of the fence. That's on corporate America's side, but that's also on people like myself who have had the opportunity to get to the executive level. It's my job to make sure that in the organizations that I'm in, I impact them in a positive way to make sure that I'm not the only one.
Right.
It's my job to educate the mid-level managers and say, hey, this is what I did to get to the senior level leadership.
Right.
And ultimately, I tell everyone, be a subject matter expert of your industry and your field. Do research, interview with people, see if you really are getting the worth that you bring to the table. And don't be afraid to negotiate if you feel as if and though that you bring a better value.
Yes, I do want to stress that. Please, and people are getting better about that, by the way. I'm even seeing that on my end of the desk. So I'm super excited that people, including women, people have this idea that women don't negotiate. That's actually not true anymore. Women is only 2% more likely to negotiate than men, which is exciting. We're starting to go, oh yeah, shoot, we have worth too. But also to your point, it's education on both sides, right? And vote with your feet, guys. I want to throw that bit of advice out there. If a company is not treating you right, vote with your feet and then put them on blast. If they refuse to promote you and kept promoting white people over you, or straight people, or non-neurodiverse or whatever, blast them for that. Put them out there. Put it on Glassdoor or Indeed. Put it on LinkedIn. Let people know what's going on and go, I'm calling you out. You need to change. This is not okay. Do it. I mean, do it professionally. Don't be weird or gross. And I'm definitely don't do anything illegal. Just going to throw that out there. But call people out. Let them know. No, this behavior is not acceptable, and this is really ridiculous. This is awful. So I want to go ahead. We have our other guest with us, Dan Roth. I'm very excited to have him with us. We're going to go ahead and bring him on because this is a great opportunity to start talking about another type of diversity. Hi, Dan.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you. We got you. And sorry, I got my little airplane headset on today. I had some technical issues, so I look like a pilot today. Oh, he's got his ready too. That makes me feel better.
Yeah. So it's funny, since I've been doing these, I have like a full-on podcast microphone. I have my little one here, and then I have my headset. So any situation that I have, like, I'm ready for it.
I do that too. I have like 6 pieces of equipment. I'm like, okay, what do I need today? Because I do my show and other people's as well. So I'm right there with you. That's funny. And you should be prepared. That's good.
I mean, when you get invited on somebody's show, it's a big responsibility. It's a great ask. Mm-hmm. It's presenting a platform. I think this one specifically is really impactful because we're talking about diversity, whether it's racial diversity, whether it's neurodiversity, and all of these things have such a strong voice, not just in the current state of our economy, but going back for hundreds of years since we started as the United States. And that's something that gets lost a lot. So I'm excited to be here, and I've been excited and happy to listen to the conversation so far.
Thank you. And I do want to point something out. I shared a quote from Martin Luther King a couple of days ago, and I feel like that's almost a cliche to share his quotes sometimes because so many people do, but it was a quote about how there can't be an outsider in America. We're all Americans. This is it. We're it. We're the group. There's not a them and us. It's us. This is it. There can't be an outsider. And we've kind of forgotten that, this equality and justice for all has just kind of been like, if we don't feel like you're important, then to you. And I don't want to get into a lot of politics, but that does carry over into the workplace. And I've seen it. And it broke my heart when I really got into recruiting. And I'd seen a little bit of this before when I was doing hiring manager stuff, but when I really got into recruiting and started working with other companies, it really broke my heart how many people would say things like, I don't want a Black person. I don't want an old person. I don't want a gay person. I don't want a Hispanic person. I need somebody that speaks English. And what they meant by that was, I don't want an accent. When I got down to the crux of it, they didn't want an accent. And it's gross. It's really gross. And it happens all the time. And I mean, every recruiter I know has these stories. Every HR person I know has stories about crazy things hiring managers have said to them. So it's very real, and it's very, it hurts me. So I can only imagine how it feels to other people, that are having these things said. And I want to talk to you, Dan, about, first of all, real quick, sorry, let's have your bio. I nearly forgot I know your bio, but so I nearly forgot it, but what's your bio? Share with us a little bit.
Oh God, I hate talking about myself. So I've spent the last 15 years between media, telecom, and healthcare, and really, as a result of the pandemic, was looking for ways to change my outlook, change my future. So I came on LinkedIn. I started branding myself. I stood out for the virtues that I felt were important to me. And through that, I decided that a career in recruitment was really what I loved and what I wanted to do. So for the last, I looked at this yesterday. I thought I'd been doing it a lot longer. It's really only been since January that I've been posting. And I have created a bunch of platforms, both for myself and others, that have really helped a ton of people get jobs. And it's that providing of hope in society today that we so need. And it's not about what you look like or where you're from, because I get people from Africa, I get people from Asia, I get people from Canada, Mexico. It's about what can you provide as a job seeker, and what can you provide as an individual that's going to give that value add.
Right. And I want to talk. So that's what true diversity is about, right? It doesn't matter. You and I have talked about this too, JaBre. It doesn't matter what's out here, right? It's just, or even if you have a physical impairment, or if you're handicapped, anything like that, it does not matter. It's what can you bring to the table? That's it, period. There's nothing else that matters when you're doing a job search. You don't need to have a young person, an old person, a gay person, a straight person, a black person, a white person, neurodiverse, non-neurodiverse. It's what unique characteristics can they bring to you? And I like to seek out different. That's how I start my hiring process. Okay, I've got a bunch of this. What matters? What new thing do I need? What new characteristics? What new mindset? What new skill set do I need? That's kind of how I look at it. And Dan, so I know you and I have talked about, you are neurodiverse. And for anybody who doesn't know what that means that neurologically speaking, you're different than other people. So that can mean autism, it can mean ADHD, it can mean all kinds of things. So, and that's not something that's visible, right? That's something that comes out kind of later.
Yeah,
a lot of times, not always.
So yes and no. I mean, and I want to be as transparent as I can. I'm not one to pull punches. I think when you look at me, you're not going to outwardly notice that I'm neurodiverse, but those that know me, like if you see me sitting here and I'm fidgeting, or I'm touching my face, or you see maybe my leg shaking, that's all because there's the ability to sit still. I constantly need to be doing something. We used to make fun of the fidget spinners, but the reality was that these fidget spinners were such great benefits for those neurodiverse individuals, because it gave us something to do to steady ourselves and steady our body language. And body language is, when we talk about job seeking, something that gets brought to our attention so much. So this is one of those ways that as a neurodiverse individual, we really wrap our heads around it and are able to compensate a little bit.
Right. And I want to say too, so for neurodiversity, I think that even at the executive level, because it's kind of our focus today, right, that's important. And one of my advisors, my key advisor on my my technology product that I've rolled out, my anti-discrimination applicant tracking system, he is neurodiverse, and he has autism. He's high functioning, and he is spectacular and interesting. And the way that his mind works is perfect for the executive level, because it sends him in all these wonderful directions and helps him to think very differently and to contribute accordingly. And the way that he communicates, I think, is fabulous too. And it's a very different experience, but it's perfect for this type of experience. And I've known ADHD people that were great at executive type positions, that kind of thing. JaBre, have you had any experience with that type of situation?
Yeah, actually, I have had the opportunity of managing a sales rep that had neurological issues, and again, like you said, having conversations, just understanding, here's how he sees the world or thinks about certain things, allowed me to learn how to communicate in a way to make sure it was effective, but then also allowed me to make him feel comfortable to be himself. Again, I think it comes back down to everything we're talking about is how do we make changes, change the culture, put people in the seat like Dan, hire Catherines of the world that look at the world differently, get representation in there and start having real good conversations. What you touched on earlier is the lack of sympathy in some cases, but I see a lot of things, lack of empathy. In most of the cases of they know they do have a sympathetic approach, but just a lot of times don't have that care of saying, let me give this person a shot, or let me have the confidence in them. And sometimes it does show a lack of confidence in himself. He got his
This is my ADHD toy that I play with, and no, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's got this thing I click on the back. I've got buttons to push, things to spin over here. This is like I was never a video game player, but it's got like that video game thing.
That's cool.
So I'm always holding on to this as my way. But JaBre, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to shift the way that you went about and empower your employee. That's not something that always happens. If I'm being very direct, one of the reasons I started working from home about 5 years ago was because I didn't feel comfortable being in the corporate work environment anymore. I felt a lot of my idiosyncrasies were being either looked down upon or were being looked at as a negative. So when I started working from home, it was really predicated on not wanting to be judged by some of those things and instead be judged by the work that I was producing. So I again want to applaud you for your outlook on that, and I would speak from a bit of the community as well.
No, I appreciate it, and I received that. Thank you.
I think that's beautiful, and I think one of the most important things to remember is that because somebody is different than the majority of the population does not make them wrong, right? It doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. One of the things I've corrected people on multiple times is I did a post a while back on LinkedIn, and actually I thought it would get basically no attention, and it ended up being wildly popular. I got hundreds of comments and connections and messages and all of this, and it was about being a bipolar business owner. And I thought everybody would ignore that, but I had so many people reaching out and saying, thank you. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't feel like there's something bad. And people keep treating me like I'm going to snap and like kill everybody, which isn't even a thing. And, and there's just this complete misunderstanding. So I think it's important if someone in your organization comes to you and lets it be known that they have a different neuro condition, if they have a different psychological condition, if they have physical impairment, medical condition, anything like that, to ask question and just say, is there anything that I can do to make working here more comfortable? Are there any adjustments that you need? If they say no, drop it. That's the end of the conversation. If they say yes, then listen to them, see what's going on. For instance, I worked with an ADHD gentleman who liked to have a yoga ball to bounce on all day. It helped make him more productive, and it helped him with it was perfect. And it was so simple. That was a $20 purchase that made his life way better at the job.
Hey, Catherine, but can we bring up kind of the elephant in the room? Because I think we need to take a step back to talk about what you're talking about. And that is that if you talk to most job coaches, if you talk to most interviewers, there's still a stigma about admitting that you're neurodiverse in the application process. So when you have to fill out the ADA forms, which anxiety and depression is covered by, under the ADA, the underlying suggestion is still the presence of unconscious bias. So even if you feel comfortable as a neurodiverse individual, you don't want to, pardon my phrasing, shoot yourself in the foot by fully admitting to it. And the problem that I see, and this is something I've personally encountered, is then I feel like it's a bit of bait and switch, because I'm very good at interviewing. I know
Right.
how to elaborate on my opinions. I'm not shy. So I tend to do very well in that, but then I get past the interview part and I come on board and it's like, well, it takes me a little bit longer to learn this, or
Right.
this is how I adjust. And then, so it feels like a bit of bait and switch, and it winds up creating a negative.
And that is hard. It is hard. And even, and by the way, so I did have a chance to chat with a neurodiverse executive who let me know that same kind of thing, right? When he gets into an organization, it throws them for a loop because they're like, wait a minute, when we interviewed you, we didn't notice any of this stuff. Now what's going on? And so what he does, and this is just his take, I'm not saying this is the right choice for everybody. He lets people know, basically, once the offer has been accepted, he goes, okay, so just so that you know, here is my reasonable accommodation list. Voila, here you go. This is it. This is what you need to know about me, because it doesn't matter. It's just like how there's always that debate of, do I fill out the EEOC information on the form? Because technically it shouldn't matter, but does it really? It's the same kind of thing. It's the same thing with the gender issue, right? People are going, well, if I want to be called they or them or anything like that, do I put that? Do I not put that? Am I going to be discriminated against? My personal opinion is I would like to see companies not ask for that information until after an offer has been made, or to send that information behind an application and have it masked so that none of the hiring team can see it until after a hire is made, because frankly, it does throw everything off. It just does, whether people mean for it to or not, right? Biases are natural, that they're there to protect us, but they also can cause harm if we don't check them. So that's my personal opinion on what I would like to see on the grand scheme of things. But for day-to-day, and what I would do if I was ever back in the job search is exactly what my friend did. And he said, you just let them know afterwards, this is my reasonable accommodation, because it doesn't matter.
And that's the thing. I made a very conscious, when I, after the pandemic hit and I separated from my last position because of the pandemic, I made a very conscious effort or decision. When I came on LinkedIn, I said, okay, my first post I'm going to talk about neurodiversity. I'm tired of being in this situation where it feels like this bait and switch mentality. So if I'm going to an organization, they're hiring me, I don't want those that are going to have that unconscious bias. So I'd rather admit it, have them know what they're getting. And if that eliminates me from certain positions, so be it. I wouldn't like those positions in the long term anyway. So,
right.
And here's the reality. As neurodiverse individuals, and this is where I get really passionate, you mentioned that, so there's a huge contingent of neurodiverse individuals that are entrepreneurs. And one of the reasons that is, and I don't know the exact term for this, we have an ability to see 7 steps ahead. So where people wouldn't necessarily find commonality or connections between two things that we say, and sometimes what we may say may come across as off or weird, which it's not. It's really because we have this way of thinking that, okay, here's where we're starting. Here's second, third, fourth, fifth. We're already thinking about 7 steps ahead. And that's something that I've dealt with my entire life in the way that I make connections. But it's one of those things, it's this glorious thing that we're able to do. So why hide it?
Right.
Like, why hide it?
That's how I feel. I like with my bipolar disorder. I'm like, when I have I can handle my depression phase. It's fine. And when I hit that mania, I'm a superhero. Nobody is more amazing than I am when I hit those mania phases. And it's incredible. And I don't feel ashamed of it. I'm not embarrassed by it. It's something I'm very comfortable talking about and just living in. And I think that's important. And I think it's the same for all types of diversity. Just don't be embarrassed, that you're a minority, or that you have a different culture, or that you have a different partner, or that that you're older, whatever it is. Yeah. Don't be embarrassed by it. And the more and more that people just stand up and go, nope, this is me, take it or leave it, I think that will make a difference. What do you think, JaBre?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that a lot of people are becoming more confident in themselves and what they know they bring to the table. And again, when you perform in your job, I would tell most people, perform in your job. show what you can do, because eventually it's going to become pretty blatant if they start not hiring you over people that you clearly can see are not as equipped or to do the position as you.
Right.
And your numbers can speak for it, your resume can speak for it. So I always say start there, because when you go for the job, be qualified for it. And then to your point, it's different now. This is who I am. Here is, how I work best. Here are the accommodations I need to be the successful person or worker that you're asking me to be in order to hit those to hit the targets that you want. And I can honestly say, when I look at a team that's not diverse, or when I see things like that, it really is a reflection of shows. Maybe I'm not saying for everyone, but shows like a little insecurity and confidence to be able to.
That's what I see too.
Somebody else to success. Like I purposely like the diverse one, because me as a Black male, I could tell you, and a Black leader, one big thing that has come up with me and other executives, you don't want to come in and black it up too soon.
I don't mean to laugh. Like, I feel like
no,
I'm sorry.
We're having a transparent conversation.
I'm sorry. I don't think anyone on the history of the show has said black it up.
What I mean by that is it's a very candid conversation, that is had amongst the community of other Black leaders and executives, because there is the stigma of, okay, when you come in, you may not want your first hire to be a Black person, or you may want to come in and say, look, let me show that I can lead somebody that does look different than me. And a lot of times, a lot of white executives don't have that same stigma on them. They can come and hire somebody that looks exactly like them and have 5 white male employees, and it's considered being a great team.
Do you know what's funny? I have seen that
conversation. That's a real conversation of when people, they tend to hire people that either look like them. They hire people that they can feel more comfortable around, rather than building a team that'll be best for the organizations, where even though there may be a difference, you just learn to manage past it. And you do that by having the executive leadership team and true training programs in place. Like, one thing I never would have thought about the term of, neurodiverse, but for you, yes, I have had someone like that. And it'll be very beneficial for leadership to go through training to even see the signs of somebody that may be a little neurodiverse, because they may not want to come out and just say, this is what's going on. But if you notice, maybe something, I will go to Dan and ask, is that something you think would be helpful for leadership to those type of trainings? Or is that something that is a little sensitive to somebody, a part of the neurodiverse community?
So I need to interject, and I know what you meant by it, but I feel as a neurodiverse individual, I need to clarify.
Please.
There is no one same person that is neurodiverse. Each of us have our own strengths and weaknesses. And I know that you didn't mean anything by that. I just want to point that out, because in our community, it's so important to make sure that and just like in the Black community, transparent conversation, that we're not all looked at as being that same person and dealing with those same stereotypes. Each one of us is different. So I want to make sure that I put that on
it's
notice.
True.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And so I think, but to your point, JaBre, I think it would be appropriate to teach executive leadership and people that are in charge of hiring and people in charge of promotions and all that or training, whatever, to look at a situation and go, okay, I do see something different. I'm going to ask this person, hey, is this effective for you? Do we need to change styles? And that really works for everything. That can work for a pregnant woman. That can work for someone who has rheumatoid arthritis. That can work for all different kinds of things. If you're looking at something and you see that somebody is for any reason just not quite clicking with the environment or clicking with the way things are currently running, stop and have a conversation with your people, folks. This is very, very basic. And by the way, nobody else's situation is your business. They're not entitled, you are not entitled to know their neurodiversity or their sexual preference or their religion, anything else. You're not entitled to that, but they don't have to share that with you. But if they ask for a reasonable accommodation, just give it to them. If they the bouncy ball thing or a different headset, like for me, I can't hear squat. I am hearing impaired, not deaf, but hearing impaired. So there are certain types of headsets that work better for me. I've had to bring that up to companies before. That's just how it works. Just get out there and have those conversations with people. But I also want to circle back to something else that you said, JaBre, in that this, when you said, you don't necessarily want to black it up right away, which is still just stuck in my head. That's going to be stuck in my head all day. But I see so many ridiculous instances of people being told something about their hair or their dress. And I've had employees in the Muslim community that received a lot of flack. I have had African American, like people from Africa, that came and dressed differently, different hair, that type of thing than what people here are used to, that received a lot of flack. As long as someone comes to work clean, because we don't want smelly people in the workplace, and we, and dressed appropriately, meaning like body parts covered, that's the end of the discussion. You need to be, in fact, I just had a conversation about this morning. You don't need to tell people what their hair needs to look like. Frankly, let's even just go ahead and say it, folks. Who cares if somebody has blue hair? Who cares? How does that ever affect anything else going on with them? That's just stupid. That's a stupid thing to focus on. Just don't. But but look at, it doesn't matter if someone wants to have an afro or dreadlocks or, I don't know, purple hair, blue hair, piercings, whatever. Now I can understand. And, I understand in certain positions, like you don't want piercings on the face. There might be a reason for that. I understand that in certain types of positions, like medical, you can't have acrylic nails, things like that. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about just judging people on their appearance and telling them how they need to wear their hair and all that. That can actually really create a prejudice, and it can really show, and you may not mean it that way, but what you may be telling someone by telling them, hey, you can't wear your hair in dreadlocks is, I don't appreciate your heritage. I don't appreciate your background. I don't appreciate your culture. And you need to stop and you need to look more like me and do more like me. And that's gross.
It is.
At least I think it is. I think that's gross. I was told I had to tell an employee something like that once, and I did it, and I've always regretted it. And I was like, ugh. This is so gross.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make you feel good when you work for an organization like that. And to your point, there is a level of professionalism that I think every organization is going to want. But when you're talking about self-expression, as long as that person is doing their job, as long as that person is not causing a distraction or stopping them from being that effective employee, to your point, why is that an issue? Right. And there's something that does come up. I know the hair issue a lot more for a lot of Black women. I know a lot of Black men have dreadlocks, but as far as Black women in corporate America, because they have a totally different plight than I do.
Right.
For being a woman and being an African American, so they have different issues that that they deal with. That is extremely important in their roles. That I can't speak to and won't pretend to, but I do want to address it and make sure that it's understood. That is a real thing in corporate America. And it goes back to starting with the culture. It goes back to having conversations like this. It goes back to people like Dan and myself and you speaking up and saying, hey, this is not right, because we deserve to be in those positions of, I don't even like the word of power, of influence, to be able to put people in place based upon their candidacy of how well they can do the job, not based upon the biases of America, that we just see. And the media, biases come in. It's a natural thing.
Yes, all of that.
But I think part of being a leader is being able to level bubbles and come in with a level head, have the situational awareness, the emotional intelligence to make a decision based upon the best for the company and not based upon personal references.
100%.
I have to say, JaBre, I didn't know you before this. I may be your biggest fan now. I love having these conversations. And one thing about me that, if you didn't know before, is one of the platforms I stand on, and I'm very much an advocate for, is women's empowerment. And there's two reasons for this. One is because I have twin girls, and I'm tired of thinking to myself, can I justifiably tell them they could be anything when they grow up in a society that they really can't?
Yeah.
And then the second is, my wife is a feminist. She's my hero. Having twins, she came into a work environment where they didn't have a maternity room set up for her to breastfeed. And that's a right. That's not a could ya, should ya, would ya. That is a fundamental right. And I do not want to get too deep down this rabbit hole, but these are what we're talking about, they're not accommodations.
Yeah, it's just common. And by the way, we're super behind on that in the US. Like that's common in Europe and other countries and other continents and other countries.
It's a law. Common. It's a law that people aren't abiding by.
It's crazy.
And like
anyway, whole other subject on that. That's a whole other
about this. Sorry.
Yeah. No, but no, I know what you mean. And it is frustrating. And by the way, yes, you should tell your daughters that they can be anything. You know why? Because that's how it changes. Yeah. The more men, for instance, my grandfather raised 4 daughters in the 50s and 60s. And he looked at them and said, you could do anything. Never let a man tell you different. That was his message to them. You know what? He has phenomenal daughters who have all had all various degrees of success, including my mother, who is an executive in the biggest healthcare system in North Texas. And they're phenomenal, interesting women. That 2 of them have kids, 2 don't, because that's another thing he told you don't have to, be a person, have your own thing going on. Yeah. So absolutely tell them that. And I want to kind of throw out there too, because this is something that's big for me, is when you're listening to people and you start learning and you start growing, share that growth. Speak up, guys. Yeah. And that's to everybody. I don't, whatever side, whatever gender or orientation or religion or gender, I said gender already, or race or whatever, age group, share that growth, share that knowledge, and stand up. Don't take it. When you see injustice, say F that. Hell no, it's not going to go on in my presence. The 1 or 2, actually 2 times I can ever think of that I didn't speak up when I should have, I'm horribly ashamed of it, and it will never happen again. Loud and proud, stand up and go, nope, nope, nope. And start insisting that your companies do better. Start insisting that they have opportunities to real advancement for non-white males. Because when 92% of Fortune 500 CEOs are white men, and they only make up 35% of the population in the US, that's stupid. Yeah. It's stupid and it's wrong. And we have a problem. I'm sorry, Dan, what were you going to say?
No, it's okay. So part of my neurodiversity is when I get on a thought track, sometimes I force it out when I shouldn't. Right. So I apologize.
No, you're okay.
I wanted to bring it back a little bit, and I don't want to I wouldn't call this a plug, but I was turned on to something as we talk about neurodiversity. And I am so glad I did. And I didn't know about this organization before. They're on LinkedIn. They're called Exceptional Minds. And what they do is they're academy and so so they're an academy and studio that they teach those on the autism spectrum for careers in digital arts and animation. And it's such an exceptional group. Like there's times and I'm a content creator on LinkedIn. I post twice a day, 7 days a week. And there's times where as a content creator, you're like, okay, I'm going to do something and that's that. Then there's times you can make a difference.
Right.
These people are a prime example of how you can make a powerful difference and set people up for success. Because whether you're Black, whether you're white, whether you're gay, whether you're on the autism spectrum, each one of us has a voice and each one of us has a place and each one of us has a right job for us. And it's a matter of finding what that is and putting ourselves in that position, which is why I tell job seekers, do not lose hope. What is meant for you is going to be right for you.
100%. And I want to thank you for being with us, Dan. We have to start closing out the show now. I just want to keep talking to both of you, but we can't. We all have lives. But thank you so very much, Dan, for joining us. It was a pleasure having you. And guys, I've dropped Dan's link down to his LinkedIn down in the comments. Please connect with him, message him. He will reach out to you. He's very responsive. Check out his content. It's wonderful. It's encouraging. Thank you so much, Dan, for being with us today.
Thank you, Dan. Nice to meet you.
All right. And so, JaBre, you and I are going to close this out together. It's been a while since I've had somebody on with me the whole show. It was fun.
Yeah, no, I liked it. I enjoyed meeting Dan and hearing his point of view. Again, I learned a lot from just the neo-diversity point. And that just
same.
We all learned. I hate that a lot of people see diversity as only in color. And I love
I know.
They look at it that way. And I know we're closing the show, but one thing I do want to point out, because I've had this conversation, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
We hear a lot of people asking, because of the climate, why is it so much of black this or black that, or why companies like a black woman this, or why are we? It's because the representation has never been there.
Yes.
And the reason being is like Dan just said, and what you just said is, you can tell your daughters they can be anything, but the difference is now they can see it actually happen.
Yes.
And they can read about it, and they can see those aspirations.
Yes.
And a lot, again, I won't say it's not a black thing. It is, sometimes it's a black thing, because
sometimes
it's at the point, and there's not a lot of us. So when we do get the opportunity to get into these positions, we do want to promote it. We do want to share it. We do want others to see that there are others that look like you in this field or in this particular
yes.
Reach out and start having conversations. So I just want to level set that of just basically saying that, diversity is more than just color.
Yes.
But when you do see the color aspect of it and wonder why companies are being so proud about it, or why we're sharing this Black excellence, it's because it's the time for it. The eyes are on us because of social media. I think the world finally has paid attention to the lack of diversity, and it is our job to seize this moment and make sure, to your point, that you understand the importance that we have these conversations in all spectrums of it.
100%. And I want to throw back out there, guys, remember that what he is saying is backed up by facts. In the Fortune 500, there have only ever been 19 Black CEOs, and there are currently only 4, when by percentage alone, there should be somewhere around 70. That's ridiculous. We're at about 5% of where we need to be. When you group minorities and women together, they make up about 12% of the Fortune 500 CEOs, and that's gross. When white males are only 35% of the population, they shouldn't be having about 90% of the CEO jobs. That's weird. It doesn't even make any sense. And it makes sense to brand and to have diversity, because you need that to understand your audience and your customers. You'll get more revenue. That's been proven in multiple studies. It matters. It matters. And so to close out, I want to thank you, JaBre, for coming on. I loved your idea about having those paths to promote and to educate and to build people up from within, get them lined up to take those next spots when that person moves out of their job. I think it's wonderful. If you're looking for diversity help, folks, don't just give the job to a random Black person at your company. That is ridiculous. Hire an expert. If you don't know one, reach out to me. I know the best in the business. Please check them out. And I want to thank you so much, JaBre, for coming on. And last but not least, please tell us what you're doing right now and why it matters and how to get in contact with you.
Yeah, no, thanks. So current role is VP of Sales at Covenant Pay Partners. I'm in the financial services space, particularly merchant services. Very important because it is a minority-owned organization that is very rare in our space. Again, only letting that plug know simply because when there's a lack of diversity, there's also a lack of account management, there's a lack of transparency. We want to bridge that gap by also servicing everyone, but also offering that safe space. Also, what I do is Thrive Business Leaders is my passion project, which helps prepare students, minority focused, but any student, on how to transition into corporate America to get into that executive leadership path, understanding that there is a game to play in corporate America, but there is also ways to go about it and things to do as far as being active in your organization and just different tips and tricks to brand yourself to get to that executive leadership level.
Absolutely.
And I will use this to end this by saying thank you to you, to everyone listening. Again, Catherine is the reason that my career catapulted to the executive launchpad.
No. I just made the intro. You're the reason.
Finding people like yourself helped me do that, and getting into an organization that was open to that, because I was that guy that was a very good salesperson, but that ceiling was there. But you found an opportunity that allowed me to get into the rooms and understand the business at a higher level to make an impact. And now we're having these type of conversations to how we continue it. And thank you again.
Isn't it wonderful? And thank you so very much for joining me today. And with that, guys, I want to thank you all so much. Remember to speak out, be loud, be proud, and keep on pushing for these changes, because we will get there. And with that, we're going to say goodbye. See you next week.
Bye. Thanks, guys.